G'day, everyone. This is Greg Ryan, and welcome to episode 33 of the 1 in 5,000 podcast, where we're talking IA-ARM. And today, I'm very pleased to say we are joined by Laurie, who is an ARM parent from America, who is also the executive officer of the Pull-Thru Network. G'day, Laurie.
G'day, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm very good. So, Laurie, you shared part of your story in the book, which is story number 106 on page 233. So would you be able to just go through your story in the book for us first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I titled mine From a Mom Who Has Been There, Done That, because our daughter at the time I wrote this, Carly, was 27. It's kind of been a long time since we've been active, the surgeries and such, but we've also seen a lot. This is what I wrote. Our daughter was born 27 years ago with Bacterl, including cloaca. And with Bacterl, she had all the parts except for the TE. She was our first child and was born full term after an uneventful pregnancy. We were told when she was about 3 hours old that she had an imperfect anus. What do you mean? She doesn't have an anus? How is that even possible? And a heart murmur. They told us they would be sending her to the Children's Hospital in the middle of a snowstorm about 40 miles away, and we couldn't go with her because the interstate was closed, and that she may require surgery. I think I spent the next 9 days in shock, basically, as we learned about her other diagnoses during her NICU stay. She did not receive that emergency surgery since she had a fistula and had passed her meconium. However, she should have, and did end up having to have an emergency surgery to create a colostomy when she was 39 days old. In 1993, when there was no internet, we had to find other ways to find medical experts and get second opinions. I learned quickly, though, that I had to trust myself and not to believe everything the doctors said. Here are some things I've learned over the years in no particular order. Ask questions, do your own research, and educate yourself. Take time for yourself. Be prepared for the unexpected. Find support for your family, parents, affected child, and siblings. The Pull-Thru Network in the USA has been a lifesaver for our family. Get a second or third opinion. Trust your gut instincts. Remember, bowel management is trial and error. What works for one family may not work for you, and vice versa. No one knows your child better than you do. For hospital stays, bring comfort items, blankets, pillows, slippers, favorite toys, games for your child and for yourself, along with plenty of snacks, phone chargers, and something to take notes on. Teach someone else, a family member or friend, to take care of your child so you can take a break. Then take a break for a day, a weekend trip, or even a week-long trip. If you can, go back to work. It will help give you purpose and allow your child to depend on themselves and other adults, not just you. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, including Facebook. Remember, no two ARM patients are alike. Each one is unique. Just because a doctor says something doesn't necessarily mean it's true or pertains to your child. Doctors and nurses are human too. They make mistakes and have bad days like the rest of us. Experience is important, but not the only factor in choosing the right doctor for your child or your family. Take notes at each clinic visit and during every inpatient stay. Keep a record of medications, procedures, surgeries, therapies, etc. Ask for copies of x-rays, CTs, MRIs, and app notes when they occur. And always give yourself grace. Don't fret about decisions made in the past. You can only do the best you can with the information you have at that time.
Well, Laurie, I reckon that encompasses everything that an ARM parent needs to know about their journey ahead. When I read it for the first time, when you sent it to me, I thought, we don't need the book. We could just put those points up.
Unfortunately, it does take for me, almost 30 years to learn all those things. It's not an easy thing. So many parents, especially if it's your first child, like Carly was for us, you don't know where to begin or what questions to ask, or especially after a diagnosis that you've never ever heard of or even dreamt was possible.
Yes. And we're coming from a time where there was no internet. You would even be struggling to find a description of ARM in an encyclopedia even then.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a very different time. And, my husband went to a medical library to get some research on imperfect anus and then on Voxerol, and, to find experts. Now can Google doctors all over the country, but I had to use the yellow pages, those things in a phone book that the phone book doesn't even exist, and called the operator to get numbers for some of the major children's hospitals across the country. And then I called them and asked to talk to their pediatric surgeon and just asked them, if this was your daughter born with cloaca, who would you have do the surgery? When I made them think in the perspective of their own child, I got some different answers.
So, in your experience, not only as being a parent yourself, but also with your work through the Pull-Thru Network, what do you believe are really the most important things that you would convey to the parent? You've listed them there in no particular order, but if I had to say the top 5, what do you think they would be?
Oh, I think one of the first things that I learned quickly, and it took my husband a little bit longer to learn, is that we have to trust ourselves and also be willing to ask doctors questions and not automatically believe everything they say, is the best answer, or that you can go get a second opinion and not feel like you're second guessing the doctors. That was something that we have to learn quickly and be able to question and say, why are we doing this? Or is this necessary? Or, how many, you just said, asking the question of how many surgeries like this have you done? This doctor is supposed to be the authority figure, and you're questioning that. And I think a lot of people, struggle with that initially.
It's changed a bit in the generations, isn't it? Because, the doctors were sort of like the godlike figures and the surgeons, weren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, we've done a lot for parents and patients to be able to be more a part of their care or their child's care, but also and advocate for themselves more. But it's taken us a long time to get comfortable with that position.
Yep. I know in our situation, there was no doubt that with my doctors and that my parents and myself, we wouldn't even think to question them.
Right, exactly. I mean, I learned quick. We had a situation so before Carly had her colostomy at 39 days, she spit up a lot. Well, the pediatrician we had at the time thought it was reflux and prescribed Zantac, which was, pretty common. But I picked up the bottle of liquid Zantac and it had a dosage of 2 teaspoons. At that point, she was about maybe 3-4 weeks old. And we were struggling to get, 2 teaspoons of milk in her. So I said, there's no way this dosage is right. And so there was this case where, I called the pharmacist and said, question them, and gave them the Carly's weight. And they're like, oh, that should be 2 cc's, or 2 mLs, not 2 teaspoons. It's like, well, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So she never took any of that Zantac. She never took any of that medication. It wasn't reflux anyway. It was because she had no room in her colon. She was spitting everything back up.
Okay. And so some of the other important parts?
I think look for support for yourself, to educate yourself quickly. taking time for yourself is so important. I said, for moms, especially going back to work, that if I have any regrets about how, we dealt with our family situation, is that I didn't go back to work. And we had some issues when Carly was older where, she was a little bit too dependent on me, I felt. And I think if I had gone back to work earlier, that she might have figured out, had to depend on herself a little greater.
One issue that I'm sure you've seen that comes across a lot is, how did you deal with the why me situation? Like with a lot of parents, they beat themselves up, don't they? Why did it happen? And
right. No, I think parents and then the affected child, adults, we all have that why me, for moms especially. I'll admit there's a mom guilt, even though, and research shows, that, this is a fluke, that happened and we didn't do anything wrong. You grew this child in your womb. You feel like, you have to be responsible in some way. I've pushed that thought back numerous times over the years, but we do have to try to listen to, the researchers and such, and take heart and believe that it really is nothing that we could have done differently. And
yes,
and it goes back to what I've said, towards the end, is that even if there was something we did, this occurs at such an early spot in the growth gestationally that many moms don't even know they're pregnant. So we don't, you're not even thinking about what you're doing. But we can't beat ourselves up over things that we did in the past that we didn't know was wrong, or even know what was happening. So we just have to learn and move forward and do better if necessary.
great advice. And as I say to a lot of parents, even the greatest medical minds and scientific minds in the world have grappled with this cause for years and haven't come up with an answer. So it's something that you're never going to get the answer that you need, in effect.
Right. I think we would all, maybe benefit some if we knew there was a cause, and that way we could do better going forward by, educating new moms or moms to be that, this can occur if you do XYZ. So let's not do XYZ if you're trying to have a baby. But until that happens, there's, the research so far shows that, it just happened. When Carly was little, I thought about it, and you think about all the things that have to occur in the right order at the right time for a healthy human baby to be born. It's amazing that there aren't more congenital anomalies out there and more things. It's more of a miracle that you have a child that doesn't have any issues, really.
You mentioned that your husband Doug did do some medical research. I'd like to ask, how did Doug handle it as well?
I think at the time when Carly was a baby, he just he felt like he had to do some of the research and try and get the information for me, because I was there at the hospital with Carly, and then even at home, I was doing all the minute-to-minute care and such. So I think he dealt with it by keeping himself busy. He took care of all the hospital bills and all the insurance stuff, and that was his way of participating and taking care of things. And then as Carly got older, well, we found the UOA, the United Ostomy Association, when Carly was 3. We're introduced to Pull-Thru Network about the same time. And it was at that first conference we went to that he started talking to other dads. And so he had the opportunity to, I think dads do handle these things completely differently. And
No doubt.
being able to talk with other dads was, I think, comforting to him. And it gave him, it was a safe place to be, with other dads that understood.
You just touched on the Pull-Thru Network. So can you give us an idea of the impact it's had on your life and your families? And I believe it's such an vital part of the USA ARM community personally.
Well, I mean, Pull-Thru Network gave us a connection so that we weren't alone. Like I said, we discovered it or were introduced to it in about 1996 when Carly was 3. And back then it was kind of a quarterly newsletter of a couple pages that was mailed out. And then in 1996 was about the time that email was coming to light. They started an email listserv. And so this listserv allowed me to email, I don't remember how many families were part of it back then, but it allowed me to email these other moms that had ARM kids and knew what I was talking about. It was in 96 that we were also starting enemas for the first time, rectal enemas, and the directions we got from our doctor was basically, you need to get this bag and this tube and do this. And it was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and there really wasn't much of bowel management back then. I talked to another mom or emailed another mom, Pull-Thru Network on the listserv, and she told me, what bag I needed and what, a gravity feed bag, and get this Foley catheter and make sure it's not latex and use this much salt and all this. So, I mean, she emailed me all the directions to do a rectal enema, and that was our connection. It was a very active listserv. There were families. I mean, I knew these people, never met them, but I felt like they were, my closest friends across the US. And so, and it was through that listserv then, and our introduction to United Ostomy Association, UOA, they've had a conference every summer. And Pull-Thru Network kind of was a chapter of UOA back then. And so we had a couple sessions each summer where we could meet. We took Carly in 96 and went to just a couple sessions. And then every year after that was our summer vacation. We went to the UOA conference, saw new families with ARM, had a few sessions, did some fun activities with them, and just felt like, we had another family. And it made sure, and we took our younger daughter, Katie, who was, when she was 3, we took her the first time. And, she met other siblings that were living, having to share bathrooms with their sibling that's doing, a rectal enema every night, and what that was like. And so from a very early age, we made sure that both of our girls knew other kids that were, experiencing the same types of things at home.
And that is so incredibly important, especially with the siblings, because rightly or wrongly, and, sometimes the siblings do get different attention, don't they?
Absolutely. And it's no one's fault. It's just how things have to occur at home. We spent a ton of time with Carly, either in the bathroom doing enemas or away from home, for doctor's appointments and things. And Katie also often got left, with grandparents and things. And, it's just, we couldn't help it. It was just how things had to play out.
Yep. So when did your official involvement in the PTN start?
So in 2005, the UOA actually disbanded. And so Pull-Thru Network was a chapter of UOA until 2005. When UOA disbanded, we had to get our own 501c3 status to remain nonprofit. And at that time, then we had to come up with our own, president and a executive committee. And the executive director at that time was Bonnie McElroy, and she invited me to be part of the initial board of directors in 2005. There were 5 of us at that time. And of the 5 original ones, I'm the only one left. In 2012, Bonnie stepped down as executive director and I took over. So I've been executive director now since 2012. It's a passion of mine. I feel like it's, Pull-Thru Network is, a purpose for me to help provide the answers and the support for new families that, are similar to myself when, we started out, and just that feeling of aloneness and shock, and that why me that you brought up, that we experienced when Carly was born. I want to do my part to help make sure other parents don't have those same feelings or can move past those feelings at a quicker rate.
Well, you're certainly doing that, I can assure you.
Oh, thank you.
I know myself, and I'll give my little insight into how the Pull-Thru Network has affected my life, is because in 2016, I travelled all the way from Melbourne to Orlando to attend the first Pull-Thru Network conference. And I can't describe in words what it meant to me and how it changed my life. I wrote in my book that I know the first morning that there was the breakfast there, I walked in and it was the first time in my life where I felt I belonged in a room.
That's wonderful, Greg.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it took so long for you to be able to walk into a room and feel so comfortable, but I'm so glad you were able to do that.
Yep. And I was a bit shy back then too, wasn't I?
You were a little bit.
Yeah.
You've grown a lot over the last 6 years.
Oh, well, it's all thanks to you guys. I can absolutely attest to that, because that's how I connected with the other adults and the families,
Right.
and more importantly, that the opportunity to talk to the doctors about the lived experience. From I know that in that year that myself, Alan, and Chelsea got up and shared our stories into the conference to everybody, which is, was a pretty confronting thing for a lot of the parents to hear, and for the adult and for the doctors, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah. I think, as we've done it, should have done it twice since then. We've done it only once because of COVID, but we have a greater number of affected adults planning to attend the conference this summer. And the more adults we have there and the more opportunities that you have to continue speaking with the doctors, I think you're the catalyst to a lot of the change that's happening. So.
Yeah, well, I like to think that we've really pushed the transition of care and the mental health side of things.
Yes.
And that's so important. So can you give us a bit of for those who might not be aware of the conference coming up in July, so can you just give us some details, Laurie, of where it is and when it is?
Sure. So Pull-Thru Network hosts a national conference every other summer. And this summer, it'll be in Phoenix, Arizona, July 20th through the 24th. We started, as I mentioned earlier, that, PTN kind of piggybacked with the UOA during their annual conferences. And then when PTN became their own nonprofit, we knew we needed a little bit of time to get our feet under us before we could host our own national conference. But we did that in 2008. And we had about, I believe it was around 40 families attend in 2008. And that was in St. Louis. 2 years later, we grew. We had our conference in Tucson, Arizona, and we had grown to about 60 families. Fast forward to 2018, we were in Phoenix again, and we had over 100 families attend. I believe it was about 30 doctors present in 2018. So of course we had to cancel the 2020 conference because of COVID, which was devastating to all of us. So we're ready and so excited about seeing all of our friends and family again in Phoenix in July. Right now, we have about 85 to 90 families registered, and we are going to have about, I think we're around 50 speakers. So that's doctors and nurses that are, the ARM experts across the country that will be speaking and collaborating with each other to help educate the parents and answer questions. One of the best parts of the conference is our Ask the Expert roundtables.
Yes.
And it's a chance where we have 3 health practitioners at a table and we invite 2 to 3 families. So, we can't do one-on-one consultations, but in a small group setting, you get to ask a lot of your own very specific questions and have the experts right there at the table talk to you directly. The doctors are all so approachable during the conference. They eat their meals with us. So families often are sitting at the table with 1 or 2 doctors during lunch and dinner. And, it's fun for the doctors to be able to see the kids in a non-clinical setting, and that helps remind them that, these are kids and the care that they provide has a big setting on their quality of life. So, I think it's a great opportunity for the doctors to, see the families in a different setting.
In a way, too, it gets back to what we were saying earlier about how whether to question the doctors, because in this setting, it becomes sort of like an even relationship.
Yes, it definitely does. And the doctors are, much more relaxed and they have a good time at our conference. And I know they look forward to it as much as our families do. As important as the educational sessions are that we arrange is the social times, the meals where we sit and chat with each other, share stories. We have fun activities every night after dinner. But it's also in our kids' playroom where the kids are in there playing with one another. They don't know whether they're the affected kid or the sibling. They all play together. But the kids are so relaxed. It's not like being at school where they have to worry if they might have an accident or a leak or, there might be a smell associated. There's none of that stress and anxiety that the kids often have at school in our playroom. It's like they already know that, it's a safe place. They don't have to worry about, everybody understands. They've all dealt with it in one way or another. And so it's not a big deal. It's a non-issue. And if something happens, then they just take care of it. It's not anything to, try to hide or shy away from. It's so much fun to watch the kids play and just be kids, worry about anything else.
It's an incredibly safe environment for, and that makes such a difference. In Orlando, the day after I gave me talk, I had a little kid, he would have been about 8 or 9, come up to me and says, "Hi, Mr. Greg. I just wanted to let you know that I've got a bottom just like yours." And fair dinkum, I had to hold back, not bursting into tears at that time.
Sure.
I still,
right,
yeah, like just to know that these kids are not going to grow up alone like most of us adults have. That to me is the most important thing for the whole thing, is that they understand that they are not alone.
Absolutely. They make lifelong friends. The USA also has a program called Youth Rally, which is a camp for kids with bowel and bladder disorders that meets on a college campus. Unfortunately, they've been virtual the last 3 years because of COVID, but it's another place where our kids can go and meet other kids like themselves, and they make lifelong friends there as well. But I think for our conference, it's often the siblings that are making because at camp, all the affected kids go to camp, and they have their things all the time. And one of the things that has been so important to me, because I do have a second child, I have that sibling in our family that they've seen the extra things that her sister's gotten to do because of her diagnosis, and not that it's fun very often, but it seems like it's extra things. When you're a kid, it does. We would go to Cincinnati, and when we go to Cincinnati, we would find fun things to do. Well, but the other one was at home with grandparents and going to school. So, that's not much fun. So one of the things that's very important to me at our conference is that we have a siblings program. And I'm so super proud that my sibling in our family she's 26 now, she's now running that program.
Oh, that's magnificent.
With her best friend, who is another sibling. And they met each other when they were 9 years old in 2005. And they've been best friends, one living in Illinois and one living in California for, what is that? They were 9, so 16, 17 years. They've been best friends. And so now they run the siblings program, and they make sure that siblings understand that, they're special too, and they have feelings, and it's okay for them to have those feelings. So yeah, that's one of the things that, is close to my heart with our conferences, doing the sibling program. And then I'm really proud of the increase in the number of affected adults that we have attending. And I think we're over 20 last time I counted of affected adults attending. So that's awesome. And that's from age 20 up to, I think our oldest one is 75. It's amazing.
I can't wait to get there. I've already booked my tickets, so I'm heading over there as always.
I'm so excited, Greg.
I wouldn't miss it for the world, Laurie. And just so all the listeners are aware that Carly is aware that you are sharing her story and your story, and that she has given permission to do that, Laurie, which is, I think, is very important.
It is. It's very important, Greg. And I think, we parents have to be careful as to how much we share about our child's condition online, especially because we just don't know how long it might last or where it might resurface. And, I struggle a little bit as a parent because I've heard from adults saying that it's the child's story to tell. And you're right, it is, but it's also a parent's story to tell. So we have to find, the way to make it so we keep our child private, their things, especially their pictures, especially. I think we need to keep those things as private as possible without giving away too many details about their life, their diagnosis, their day-to-day struggles, maybe. But at the same time, we as parents need to be able to share our story and our struggles. And so it's a fine line we walk, but I think we parents do need to be careful about how much and what it is that they're sharing. And we can talk about our struggles. We've been in the hospital and how tiring that is, or frustrating, or we're here for another surgery, but we keep the actual particulars as private as possible.
And do you find that as Carly's grown up, your attitude or insight has changed any from that perspective?
Yes. When Carly was younger, we didn't have Facebook.
No,
So,
it's true. Yes.
so,
Yes.
so I kind of got away from that. Now, we did have a care page, similar to Caring Bridge. So that was something that where I did share Carly's story, especially, all of her different hospitalizations and such. And I don't really know comparatively how much more private. I mean, it's definitely more private than Facebook, but haven't tried to search things myself, although Care Pages has been shut down now. So I don't know that there's anything really left out there on Care Pages, but it was something that I had to invite people to be able to go to and see. So that was the way we shared, our trials and tribulations and such. One of the things I've marveled at over the years due to the internet, I find the internet a blessing and a curse for new parents, actually, because there's so much information out there, and it can easily become overwhelming, especially when you have to figure out what to believe and what's accurate and what's not accurate. And you can have all that information, at your fingertips and a click of a few buttons, a few keys. Whereas when Carly was born, it took us, a good 6 to 9 months to, be able to get books checked out of the medical library and read it and figure out what we were actually reading. And the information, I felt the information we got came to us a little more slowly, but I think it gave us more time to digest things. Yes. And we learned things more slowly, but I feel like we had an opportunity to learn at a slower pace and didn't have, there's some scary things out there. ARM can be pretty scary if you look at the wrong things, and it doesn't need to be that way. So I think it's definitely a blessing and a curse, but it's one thing that, we need to, I think parents just need to be mindful of oversharing.
That's very good advice. And I know that my default position's always been, I'm not a doctor. Another parent's not a doctor. Is if you've got an issue, talk to your doctor, because
absolutely, I totally agree.
Because we get the support groups are wonderful, and I should know because I run one.
Right, right.
The issue is someone may have an issue that a parent may have an issue that they feel that needs to be addressed right away. Even like say it's a skincare issue or whatever, but you might get 10 different answers, but every one of those 10 different answers worked for the parent that provided that answer.
Right.
But
right.
As you say in your story, not one ARM patient is the same.
It is. I mean, and that's what I think it makes ARM so challenging, is that there's not just one treatment. There's not, and definitely no cure, and so it's difficult, to know that, just because it worked well for one person, it doesn't mean it's going to work for the next one. And it just, and that is a struggle and a challenge. And that's one thing that's never going to go away. I believe there's never going to be, a one and done.
I can attest to that. Well, Laurie, I can't thank you enough for joining us and giving us such a wonderful insight into your life as a parent, and especially as the executive director of the Pull-Thru Network. And I would encourage any listeners who are listening, if you are able, to register to go to the conference, because it would have such an impact on not only your lives, but your child's or their siblings as well. So thanks very much, Laurie. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.